Okay, and welcome everyone to Green and Healthy Homes Initiative's webinar on whole house repair programs incorporating electrification. I'm Catherine Lee, Director of Client Services with GHHI, and I'm joined by my colleagues today, Justin Berry, who is a Senior Analyst for Climate, Energy, and Equity, Bianca Mendoza, who's with our Trenton team that's busy implementing the program we're going to talk about today, and Bert Cooper, our Vice President of State and Local Strategic Services. I am going to go ahead and share my screen so everyone can see our presentation to get us going. And if you have any questions, you are welcome to put that in the Q&A box as we go, and we'll have some breaks here and there to be able to respond to those questions. All right, can everyone see the screen? There we go. Is that visible? Good, okay, thanks, Justin. So a little bit about GHHI. Our mission is that we are dedicated to addressing the social determinants of health and the advancement of racial and health equity through the creation of healthy, safe, and energy efficient homes. We've been at this work of creating and coordinating health, safety, and energy efficiency measures for over 30 years as an organization that we have been in practice and have developed some of the practices that we'll talk about today for how to make that work happen in the field and also what we learn from it. So our agenda is that we are going to do an overview of the Whole House Pilot Program in Trenton, New Jersey, and how that program is currently working and will be incorporating electrification measures. So we'll hear from our speakers that are doing that work and have put a lot of effort and thought into planning it out as well as implementing. So part of this, webinar series is to support training around implementation for the whole house strategy. And just want to let everyone know that the programs that we're talking about and the kind of programmatic case studies for the various models that are taking this approach to housing repair and retrofitting programs are being gathered in a training guide that we are developing. We're very close to finalizing, and we'll share with everyone, all of our attendees, registrants for this webinar series, and through GHHI's website and social media. So to be continued on access to the guide, but the information that we're sharing in addition to these webinar recordings will be available there. And we really want to focus on sort of some key themes of best practices around program design and implementation practices that we think are really valuable for people to learn about and think about how they can incorporate into the work that they're doing. So our information is collected into sort of thematically around policies that are enabling electrification in alignment with other housing repair and hazard reduction programs, as well as energy efficiency programs. Partners that are engaged in this work and funding resources to enable a whole house approach. Lessons learned, things around really identifying barriers to implementation, what communities are doing to overcome barriers, and also how different programs and partners are planning for evaluation. So we have an understanding of what the outcomes are for families and programs that are engaged in this work. And also what we're learning about what valuable community engagement practices are in play, ensuring that as we're moving forward, we're speaking with communities about the value of whole house work, electrification work as a part of that, and that communities are involved in the decision-making and education and evaluation design of programs. So these are all themes that we will continue to revisit as we move forward and talk about our case studies. So in our first session, we heard from folks from the Philadelphia Energy Authority in their implementation of the Built to Last program. We shared out the recording of that session, but if you need it, we'll reshare the link in the chat, and we'll have it in the email that goes out after this session as well. Today, we're going to be talking about Trenton and things happening in the state of New Jersey. And our next two sessions we'll focus on our Baltimore programming. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Justin and Bert, and we can start talking about the BPU program.
Thank you, Catherine. So I'm going to provide just a bit of an overview and background concerning the whole house pilot in Trenton, and then I'm going to try to spend the bulk of the conversation or the presentation with Justin working through our electrification strategies, which we think folks will find very interesting. I want to acknowledge that this is very much a work in progress. It's a pilot, so we're learning as we go. It's very exciting work, and we look forward to sharing where we are with you all. So first off, the whole house pilot program there is being conducted with a number of partners, including the Board of Public Utilities in New Jersey, which is our primary funder for the initiative, and is very interested in working with us to sort of learn along the way and incorporate lessons that we learn into their statewide weatherization program to help create more, I guess, equitable opportunities for folks to receive weatherization services as folks who would not normally be able to participate or having health and safety issues resolved and are able to take advantage of their program offerings. We work very closely with New Jersey Comfort Partners, which is the name of the statewide weatherization program that is run in collaboration with local utilities in the state. We are a grantee and partner with the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs. They are a primary funder of lead remediation and abatement services, which we're incorporating into our pilot, and PSE&G is the local utility there. So that's the nature of the partnership that's working to move this initiative forward. I wanted to just touch briefly on some of the reasons we're all here and sort of the opportunity moment that we're in. In terms of the electrification work specifically, the Executive Order 316 in the state has resulted in a goal to electrify 400,000 residential dwelling units statewide, and this is important, an additional 10% of residential dwelling units in low and moderate income communities by 2030. So the state and its departments are highly motivated to figure out sort of how to do this on the ground and to move this work forward. At the same time, there have been a couple of sort of historic changes in New Jersey on the healthy housing front. They are now moving into full implementation on the lead-based pay inspections and rental dwelling units law there, which requires landlords to have basically to get the lead out of their units and to register those units as lead safe with their local municipalities, and sort of complementary investment. The New Jersey State Legislature has included $170 million in ARPA funds to basically get the lead out of people's homes. And so that's just a little bit of context in how we're able to move this work forward. You can go to the next slide, please. So basically the issues of the challenge we're looking to address is that, weatherization services and accompanying electrification cannot be performed if a home is going to be made more dangerous as a result. So if there is asbestos in the house, for example, if there is mold and moisture that can be trapped in the unit, we need to get that out so that we can address and resolve deferrals from the weatherization program that would allow these units to get served. We think about this as a primary equity issue for us, as these units would not be able to receive these services otherwise. And with all these resources coming down through the IRA for electrification, and the benefits of electrification, we want to make sure we're doing everything we can to open these opportunities for low and moderate income households. So that's the primary challenge that we are working on and looking to resolve. We can go to the next slide here. So we are working in the city of Trenton. I just wanted to note that we had done an asset and gap analysis as we got started on this work a while back, and you'll see from the slide here that Trenton has got I don't know if it's the highest, but it's among certainly the highest percentage of children under 6 with EBLL, and an elevated lead level in the state, elevated rates of asthma hospitalization, an old housing stock, and high poverty rate. So for these reasons, we've chosen to really invest and figure out how to do this work well in the city of Trenton. Next slide, please. So in terms of the issues that are creating deferrals that we are looking to resolve, I just wanted to give folks a sort of a set of an example of the type of issues we're addressing. So we see a number of issues with mold, moisture, and roof leaks are a challenge for us. Asbestos and foundation leaks are also challenges. And surprisingly, I think at first we don't see a lot of knob and tube, which is more common in some of the other places where we've been working, particularly here in Providence, where I'm based. But through our agreement with BPU, we have resources where we're able to address these health and safety issues and return the units back to Comfort Partners as part of our whole home strategy. You'll hear us at GHHI talk quite a bit about aligning, braiding, and coordinating resources. So as we talk about whole house strategies, just wanted to share this slide briefly to explain that this is essentially what we are looking to do in Trenton and other places where we work. We work across partnerships, our partners, to basically align existing services and funding, to braid and acquire in many cases new resources that we can put together to work collaboratively to result in a home that is safe, energy efficient, and increasingly decarbonized as we continue to advance this work. And once you get into this, you quickly learn that you need to coordinate those services very closely across agencies to make sure that you're having the desired result. Next slide, please. So the Trenton Whole House Pilot, what we're doing there is we're working to develop an approach to healthy housing and coordinating energy efficiency improvements that will result in safe and healthy homes that will be energy efficient and will be able to access those energy efficiency and weatherization services quickly. The specific goals include streamlining and developing practices in a system that will result in these units getting done while supporting our progress towards the New Jersey goal to make 10% of low to moderate income housing stock electrification ready by 2030. To do this, we are pursuing our objectives there to basically conduct whole house interventions in 100 units. So these are units where we are addressing health and safety issues, and they're being returned to the Comfort Partners program for weatherization. Out of those 100 units, we have been working to design, and Justin will be talking about this, electrification or electrification readiness measures that we'll be installing in 20 of these units by June of 2025. And I'll let Justin talk a little bit more about that here momentarily. And so resources that we are working with include the Department of Energy State Energy Program. This is through our partnership with BPU, where we have an average or approximately $10,000 where we're able to go into these homes and address health and safety issues that are preventing them from accessing the weatherization program. We then, as I noted, return them to Comfort Partners, where they're able to complete weatherization and energy efficiency measures in the units using their existing program resources. And on top of that, we've been over the summer figuring out how to integrate our LRAP program, our lead remediation and abatement program, with these other resources so that we're able to get the lead out of the units. And to the extent possible, we're also looking to partner with other community-based organizations to refer for additional home repair or healthy housing resources. So basically, it's relatively straightforward in terms of the pilot. The client is deferred from Comfort Partners due to a hazard. Bianca, who's on the call with us here, is our client intake specialist who works with those families to ensure that they're enrolled and do the intake with them. And then we have our coordinator who goes out and provides education services and importantly, an assessment to identify and to develop the scope of work for contractors based on a health and safety assessment, a comprehensive assessment that we complete and then we send those out to the contractors that we work with as we continue to develop our pool there who address those hazards. We go back out, make sure that the work is done to a high standard of quality, and then we will close out the unit and refer the unit back to Comfort Partners. We are in the process now, and as I noted, Justin will be talking more about this, of working with the CMC Energy, who is the implementing partner for the Comfort Partners program in New Jersey, to not only conduct weatherization services, but as part of the completion of weatherization services, advance and install a number of electrification measures in the units in our attempts to get them either fully electrified and off of the gas grid completely, or make them electrification ready. And Justin will talk more about what exactly that means. So progress to date, we've received almost 300 deferrals from Comfort Partners. We have conducted 53 environment assessments, health and safety assessments in clients' homes. We are basically, I mentioned this is a work in progress. We're scheduling bids and deploying contractors and working on our first 15 units to basically address these issues. And we're just returning our first 5 units to Comfort Partners for additional weatherization measures. Now, I noted that we've got our lead program is coming online, and all of this work requires actively building your contractor pool and capacity to do increasingly more units. So we're continuing to focus on that. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Justin to talk a little bit more in more detail about the electrification work that we have moving forward.
Awesome. Thanks, Bert. Great to be here to talk to everybody about this work. As Bert described, part of what we've been doing over really the last a while working with the BPU is building out a plan that would let us have consistent protocols and develop a pilot to help the BPU with figuring out electrification. So adding electrification to 20 homes in the whole home pilot in Trenton, working closely with the BPU and their technical advisors on this plan. So that's what we're here to share out some of the details from. As a reminder, we're doing this within the scope of the rest of the whole home pilot that Bert just described. So these are homes we're looking at that are already going through the whole home program, receiving the health and safety and efficiency upgrades that can make them really good candidates for electrification because the homes already has a high efficiency and those other hazards are remediated. So this electrification pilot has the same scope, timeline, and funding sources as the whole home pilot generally. You can go to the next slide, Catherine. So as we started mapping this out, we worked with the BPU and their technical advisors to kind of lay out the principles that would guide how we were identifying priority candidates and the protocols we would then implement for electrifying them. So happy to share these here. First, not to add household energy costs. 2, to create long-term and short-term benefits for the residents. 3, to prioritize households that will see health benefits from air quality improvements. 4, to collect diverse data metrics and build capacity for program scale. And 5, to empower residents and improve overall living conditions in the home. So again, this is working with the Comfort Partners program that has a big or is focused on efficiency. The BPU wants to move towards being able to align with the state climate goals around electrification, and GHHI shares that mission, as well as wanting to bring this health focus. So that's guiding how we've approached the electrification parts of this pilot. You can go to the next slide, Catherine. So this table will be the different categories that we're looking at for electrification interventions. And what I'm going to get to next is walking everyone through a decision tree that guides the homes in the program into these different categories. But first, I want to take a minute to describe what they are. So it ranges from the full electrification homes to homes that are going through the standard whole home program without added interventions. So for all these homes, they're going to be receiving weatherization, health and safety. Then for the homes that are receiving electrification interventions added on top of the standard whole home, we'll be upgrading their electrical systems to make them electrification ready. We'll also be looking at appliances. In the full electrification category, we're looking at fully replacing any appliance in the home that would need gas or other fossil fuels. For the other categories, we're looking at steps along the way, but not full electrification. The second category there, the hybrid heating system, would be homes where we're putting in a heat pump to add electric heating and cooling, but leaving in a gas heating system if it's working well. So we're calling this the hybrid heating system. So we're not removing the fossil fuel heating system from that home, but adding a heat pump that gives that electric heating and cooling benefit. And then that last line there is electrification ready homes where we're not putting a heat pump in, but we've determined that there's a good opportunity to bring the electrical system and perhaps some select appliances to electrification because of the benefits it'll offer the household. I may ask to return to this slide, Catherine, after we do the decision tree, but wanted folks to see this in a table so there's some familiarity with what they're going to see on the next couple of slides with the decision tree. So with the decision tree, again, it's a tool to determine which homes that are receiving whole house services through the whole home pilot should be a priority candidate for additional electrification measures. It sorts them into those categories on that last slide, and then we'd approach those clients and say, hey, we think your home would be a good candidate for these additional measures. Is this a scope of work you'd be interested in receiving? As we're making these decisions, we're prioritizing cost savings, health, and safety. And again, just reiterating, if the homes aren't going to be electrified, they're still going through the standard whole home procedures. So they're getting the health and safety benefits and efficiency benefits that are within the original scope of this pilot. So great, you can go to the next slide, Catherine. I'm going to zoom in as we go through the next slides, but this is the full visualization of this decision tree. So again, you can see those categories at the bottom, starting again with the home that we're already looking to do some work in. Great, you can go ahead. So this first question that we're starting with is, what is the fuel type in the home for heating? Right off the bat, from our conversations with our partners in New Jersey and our research, we know that homes that are relying on delivered fuels have pretty significant benefits from cost savings as well as climate benefits of moving to electrification. So if they're on delivered fuels, we're automatically sorting them into that category. If they're using electric resistance heating, so they're already electric, but an inefficient form of heating, we'd say they'd be a good candidate for full electrification. And if they have an electric heat pump, we'd make sure if there's anything else that could be done to that home, perhaps they still have another gas appliance, we'd say there'd be a good opportunity to fully electrify them so they're not relying on gas in that situation. The homes where we're then going to go to the next question are homes that are using gas for heating, whether it's a dual fuel system or gas as the only fuel source. One of the big important things with this process on electrification is we wanted to make sure this was integrated with the existing protocols of both the pilot and the Comfort Partners program. So we framed this question of, would the gas appliance be worth replacing in an electrification scope through the lens of how folks approach this through the Comfort Partners program. So looking at the efficiency, the age, or the safety of that appliance. So we built this guidance around what's already in the Comfort Partners program manual. So first, we're looking at if the efficiency of the system is below a point. Our first guidance for identifying, once to look at more closely, is 85 annual fuel efficiency, AFUE. So a furnace that's not operating at peak efficiency and at least a few years old, since we'd rather not be replacing new, high efficient working furnaces. And that we determined through our conversations and our research of saying that may be the point where the cost of using a high efficient cold climate electric heat pump would be comparable to a gas furnace. Above that efficiency, we're pretty confident the gas furnace is going to be the best fit for that home. But below that efficiency, there may be cases where the cost savings would be a benefit to that resident. Or if we're looking at these other concerns in this second darker bullet point of things that are standard in an efficiency program of identifying a furnace that's not in good working condition, that's posing some hazard, or you'd expect that it would need to be replaced in the short term, but we're already in the home doing some work, let's look at potentially replacing that furnace. And if we're going to be replacing it, let's look to see if they'd be a good candidate for electrification. Highlighted at the bottom here, just this really important note, we want to make sure costs aren't going up for residents. So this is the starting point of identifying homes that are worth a close look. That close look would be doing pretty close energy and cost modeling before making a final decision on what we recommend for that household, if having a heat pump would be a good fit for them. So if the answer to these questions are yes, we're saying this looks like a home where the gas furnace may be a good candidate for replacement. We're going to keep looking at them for those electrification categories. You can go to the next slide, Catherine. So I'll point to that little graphic in the bottom, I believe for everyone left-hand corner, where I'm highlighting where we are in the decision tree here. So these are the homes where we're saying yes. There's initial look is that there's a reason to justify replacement of a gas furnace. Take that step of doing the closer cost modeling, confirm that there'd be bill savings for the scope that we're proposing. Have a check to make sure in the case that it's a rental that we're not changing who's responsible for the heating fuel in a way that would cause problems. As long as those two things check out, we're saying this is a good candidate for electrification, joining those other homes that are on delivered fuels or electric resistance. If there's concerns with either of those things, we put this in case by case of let's make sure we're giving it a close look, talk to the client, figure out what might be best dependent on the home. Yeah, so this is how we would sort homes into this good candidacy for full electrification, total fuel switching, not needing any reliance on fossil fuels. The other side of the tree is for the homes where, no, it doesn't look like it makes sense to replace that gas furnace. So now we're evaluating them for these intermediate steps of either not needing any electrification interventions, or perhaps putting in a heat pump, or perhaps upgrading the electrical system and looking at some of their other appliances. We start with the first question of checking if they have efficient central AC. We know there's really important comfort and health benefits to having AC, especially as our summers get hotter, and that a heat pump can provide that. So if they don't have AC, we're looking at perhaps that would be a good candidate to put that heat pump in, giving them cooling, and do it in a way so that if in a few years they decide or the economics change or their gas system stops working as efficiently, they're set up to then be able to use their heat pump. And we've got that home pretty close to electrification without worrying about cost burdens in the short term of raising their home heating or cooling costs. If they're not going to be someone who needs a new AC unit, so in this case, we're not really looking at adding a heat pump. We have these three questions of looking at other significant appliances or their electrical system. One, there's health or safety concerns associated with a gas stove. We know there can be significant indoor air quality impacts of burning fuel in the home for cooking, especially if there's poor ventilation or it's a small home. If there's folks in the home that have asthma vulnerabilities or other respiratory issues, or if the home's looking like it's leaking carbon monoxide, say, all right, that would be a concern. Looking at the electrical system, as Bert noted, so far we're not seeing too much of worries about knob and tube, but maybe found those in some examples. So let's flag that as a potential benefit that if we fix the electrical system, either upgrade the panel or the wiring, that could be very helpful to that home. Or three, if there's efficiency, age, or safety concern with the water heater. If there's concerns with any of those three categories, we'd say it makes sense to do an intervention for that specific concern. Let's take a look at doing a fuller scope that would bring the entire home up to this electrification ready standard, where we're taking care of the electrical system, seeing if some of the appliances would benefit from being replaced, make sure the wiring is good to accommodate future electrification upgrades with the furnace, or the heat pump, etc. If there aren't concerns with any of those, that's a great situation to be in that the home has a good electrical system, safe cooking situation, water heaters working well and efficient. So they'll just go through the standard whole home procedures. We wouldn't be looking at them as a priority for these additional electrification measures. Great. So to wrap up, when we're talking about the different measures we'd be doing in building out these scopes, we worked with the BPU to lay out what those interventions would be. So to just add some more detail for folks on the call, if we're replacing the HVAC system or the heating system, we're looking at centrally ducted cold climate air source heat pumps or mini splits, depending on the situation, the home structure, ductwork, etc., and the cost of removing previous equipment and the related costs with that. For water heater replacement, we're looking at heat pump water heaters, or if there's space constraints where heat pump water heater isn't going to operate effectively, or temperature concerns with where the water heater is, Then we would put in a standard electric water heater and cover the cost of removing the previous equipment. For stove replacement, we'd be looking at induction stoves and cookware so that folks are getting a high quality unit that has the most benefits for their indoor air quality. If that's not something they're interested in, there's other concerns with the home, having standard electric stoves as an eligible expense, looking at being able to cover the cost of range hood ventilation, removing the previous equipment. And again, with the full electrification, we're looking at replacing any fossil fuel appliance, so they're not having to maintain a gas connection just for a single appliance. So potentially we need to replace a dryer, with that listed as an eligible cost of the program. For electrical upgrades, upgrading panels to 200 amp panel, unless there's a clear recommendation that that's not needed, but we want to make sure homes are set up for the future here. Upgrading wiring, dedicating wiring outlets for new electrical appliances, removing knob and tube wiring, or other costs related to electrical service upgrade if the utility needs to come out to change how the service is delivered to the home. And then finally, covering the costs of dealing with the old system. Again, if homes are going to be fully disconnected from gas, terminating the gas line, removing an old oil or propane tank, removal of piping or other related hardware. So we work to make sure that we're able to fully cover the costs that would be associated with this work, and make sure that we're setting these homes up for success, electrification ready, full electrification, etc. I think that covers the stuff I wanted to work through. So yeah, I'll turn it back over to Catherine, I believe.
Thanks so much, Justin and Bert. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can start responding to some of our questions from the audience. So our first one is about the cost benefit and the cost benefit analysis. I think maybe before I get into the attendee questions, if I can ask you, Justin, to just sort of give us maybe a little bit more detail about that in reference to the principle of determining the changes in energy costs and how that evaluation is happening, and what the bill modeling process is like, if you can speak to that in any more detail.
Yeah, so we started with doing some research based on some of the energy planning that the BPU had done, other folks had put out, of understanding that, because of the efficiency of heat pumps, there's cases where the expectation is, that they can save costs related to gas furnaces, especially if the home is already efficient. So we felt confident that that would be the case in enough situations to justify building that into the protocols. But then we also know that every home is going to be different. The condition of the home, the amount of efficiency upgrades we're able to do, how that home is using their heating and cooling system, if it's a detached home, all of that stuff. So our plan is that, we're first identifying homes we think will be good candidates, right, based on these general criteria, which I laid out. And then we'd want to do the more precise modeling using some of the softwares that we have experience with GHHI, like Snug Pro modeling, where we can plug in the exact specifications of the home and the upgrades we're proposing, how that's going to change the efficiency, the home's previous heating usage, and get plugged in a number based on their modeling for those home conditions of whether that project would lead to cost savings or not. We're taking a similar approach with our other programs, including in Baltimore, which we'll get to hear some more detail about in the future webinar. I'll say we know that this is, this modeling, there's utility rates to think about, there's the home conditions to think about, there's the weather to think about. So we want to get it as exact as we can for folks, and are going to adjust as needed as we start getting some feedback and getting into homes and modeling it out, and then track the outcomes is our plan, to be able to work with those clients, and then have those past experiences inform how we approach the next ones.
Great. Thanks so much, Justin. And I think this would go to either you or Bert, whoever has been, I know as an organization, we're keeping track of the data that's coming out on kind of evaluation of the new heating and cooling technologies going into homes. So we have a question about the cost benefit of heating and cooling pumps, and how those differ from our current high efficiency heating and cooling systems, and if we have any data on that. I think that's related to what you just shared, that there's some relativity and kind of based on climate and building stock and those sorts of things. But do you know of any sources of information for that kind of analysis for people?
I would defer to you, Justin, for that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I got distracted looking at a different question. My
No, that's
apologies. Can you say
okay.
it again? Yep.
I mean, I would say where we see a lot of up-to-date information on that kind of analysis is from the Department of Energy and in their information about efficient building equipment, which they update pretty regularly. And we have a link to that in our forthcoming implementation guide. So I'll share the link prior to the next session when we do our recap here, so we can make sure that everyone has access to that information, because I think that is still unfolding, of getting more data about the efficiency and cost benefits of these different appliance options.
Yeah, and I would also note that there's a value in terms of our objectives around decarbonization as well, and fuel switching to electricity. So factors into our decisions as well.
And then we have another question that came in about thought being put into installing any generator backup systems in homes in case of electrical blackout. And I think maybe we could speak to some conversations around that, but also some programs that are thinking about the coordination of electrification and even like solar installation backup systems and other technologies similar to that.
Yeah, I will note that we will want to be doing whatever we can to connect participants to community solar, in particular in New Jersey, both as a way to help prevent folks from losing power, but also to create an additional incentive for fuel switching away from gas, is folks are expected to see at least a 10% decrease in the cost of their electricity by switching over to solar, as part of that initiative there. I think also it'll be interesting as we get into this work, and I think this will be some learning for us, is we learn about how interested folks are in terms of going fully electric, and it's quite possible that we'll see a lot of people opting for maybe sort of a hybrid approach where it makes sense, where they've got sort of a dual fuel solution in their house. So I think that's some learning that we'll have in front of us as we get further and further into the work.
Yeah, and also add like specific to things like battery or installing solar on the home. Like right now, that's outside of the scope we have, but it's one of the things definitely on the radar of things that can offer benefits to homes, and why we think the electrical upgrades can be so important, of helping make sure that these households are set up to take advantage of other programs that may offer that, or other opportunities to potentially bring that in the future. Sometimes there's a thought of, maybe we don't need to do all the panel upgrades and such if we can more precisely size all of the heating and cooling, but making sure we're taking those steps so that it really is going to be a robust electrical system in this home, which many of these older households may be lacking, so that a battery or solar panels can be added to the future, and that home is set up to accommodate it without needing someone to go back in and do even more electrical work.
Thank you, Justin. And we have a couple of programmatic questions. One about the potential to receive referrals for this program. Bert, so do you mind talking through how you're working with Comfort Partners to do intake for this as a refresher?
Yeah, the way we are currently set up, and the way as we got started, is we were taking referrals directly from Comfort Partners for units that have been deferred, and that's still the primary way we are currently doing this. I think we are continuing work, especially as we stand up our lead program, to explore other ways to refer directly into the program. I think the trick is we're working specifically with deferral, so we would need to be able to assess sort of on the front end whether a unit would likely be deferred, and then work with Comfort Partners to make that happen. But we're not there yet. So we're currently just taking deferrals directly from Comfort Partners.
Great, thank you. And another question we got from the audience is the program for homeowners in the state of New Jersey or specific cities. So if you want to talk a little bit about eligibility for this and the conversations that BPU has had about potential for working in places outside of Trenton, that may be helpful.
Yeah, so this is currently a very discrete pilot that is taking place in the city of Trenton, where we're looking to enroll and do work in 100 units. So we're currently confined to the Trenton city limits. We are very interested in working with other jurisdictions, such as Newark. I know there's some interest there to, launch additional whole house models that would include electrification. It wouldn't necessarily be part of this specific pilot, but could be very similar to it and benefit from some of the learning we're generating from it, and would be happy to have those conversations with folks. But we're currently committed to completing these 100 units and sort of rigorously evaluating the results of this. And I think once we have that, Comfort Partners and BPU will be more amenable to us formally expanding this pilot in this effort.
Yeah, and the Comfort Partners program does allow for renter occupied units to be enrolled, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think we had some questions there. So yeah, if there's any sort of thoughts about or any other interest in enrolling renters, working with property owners and managers on this program, I think we can speak to that, which is something that we talked about in our last session as well. So we have another question about I think this is an interesting way of phrasing this. The program's exposing fatal flaws in housing of things that are, really unsafe or not up to code that create other issues. So I know this is, I think, a common thing that we all engaged in doing housing assessments, working in home repair programs, are concerned about if we're working with homes or housing units or really have an extreme health and safety issue or have really high cost repair needs that may be beyond the scope of programs. So I don't know if there are any specific lessons learned from this program about that, or any other ideas in general of how to support any households who may be in that situation.
We don't have the resources currently to take on some of the major issues that are likely resulting in those code issues presently in Trenton. I think it's something we'd be very interested in figuring out how to address. I would note there's an interesting practice in Providence, Rhode Island, where I'm based, where the city has created a sort of major home repair program that's tied directly to code enforcement. And so they're currently going out and will make significant forgivable loans to folks to address some of these issues in their homes. And we're currently working here in Rhode Island to layer on an initiative that would actually be quite similar to what we're doing in Trenton, where we would be able to take the next step in some of these homes to address the code issues and then go in and weatherize them and install electrification measures. So that work's evolving, and I think there's a ton of potential for it.
Great, thanks for that, Bert. So our next question, this seems to be an affordable housing preservation strategy, which I do think I agree with and have seen that reflected in a lot of long-term housing programs for communities where we work. But yeah, the follow-up question to that is, have you all thought about talking about it in a manner in addition to climate goals? And I think it's a yes and response, but maybe we could talk, this would be a good opportunity for us to talk about that in the state of New Jersey, as how this is a strategy for multiple state organizations to build more equitable access to programs related to housing, health, safety, and efficiency.
Yeah, I would actually just comment we are investing a lot, although many would say not nearly enough for new affordable housing units. And the way I think about our work, and particularly the whole house approach, is a really promising strategy, I think underutilized around the country, to preserve the built low income housing or low and moderate income housing stock, or housing stock in low and moderate income communities, in a way that's equitable and good for the environment. And so I would agree with that. And I think we probably can be doing more to talk about it like that. And being a little bit more strategic, because I think a lot of people sort of scratch their heads. They don't really know how to strategically invest in the built stock, and I think that's exactly what we're doing
Yeah, agree. Well, and I have another question that I wrote down as you all were both presenting, about the program evaluation, because we're going to be doing some pre and post evaluation measures. And I think we're going to be looking at different outcomes for households related, not just related to cost, but also some health and economic outcomes. Can we talk about that process a little more and what we think we're going to learn from the pilot program?
Yes, I'm kicking myself for not having our evaluation plan up in front of me, but I will do my best. Justin, feel free to augment. We are conducting a number of surveys as we enroll units into the program around comfort score, around sort of health and safety issues around asthma in particular, where we think, given what we're doing, we can have a pretty major impact. And we collect data along the way through our coordinator and our client intake specialist around these measures. We are also going to be, and this is sort of a newer development, enrolling folks in, Jessica, I'm going to draw a blank on the name of the software we're going to be using to monitor energy consumption. As folks, both before and after we do the intervention. So we'll be looking at basically cost and consumption as we at the unit level for folks as we do this work. And that's all, of course, information that BPU is extremely interested in. But all of this is, we're tracking all of this meticulously with our data and evaluation crew through our efforts to outcomes database. So.
Yeah, to add to what Bert was saying, like the health impacts being really significant, especially with such a holistic scope of work, and realizing that, on the utility bills, that it's helpful to have a really close eye on that, given that the newness of fuel switching, complicates some of the stuff, right? So we want to be able to get utility bills directly to folks to be able to follow that closely in real time. So we've planned to use a software called Utility API that we can work directly with folks to help them automate the process of being able to share some of that data with us, and then working with our data team to have a way to compare the pre and post with some weather normalization as a part of that process, so that we're seeing how their costs and energy use changes. And then taking those extra steps of doing that modeling on the front end, so we're confident in what folks can expect.
Great, thank you so much. So I do not see any other unanswered questions in the Q&A panel. I'll keep an eye on that. Looks like we got maybe one in the chat related to research into air to water heat pumps, which I have to say I don't know anything about. And older housing stock moving around air can exacerbate indoor air quality. We'd like to move toward these systems for ductless heating and cooling. So yeah, that's a technology I'm not familiar with, but we'll have to keep an eye out for information on that.
Yeah, my understanding is this would work similar to like a boiler or some other, I think the phrase is hydronic system, right? Where you're using some fluid for heating and cooling. It has not been on our radar as much. Our hope is that we can remediate some of those issues that may be caused by moving air. But definitely, if that's we're in situations, or other programs folks are in situations where that's remains a concern. Appreciate the flag on the reminder that there's other options there, and that's something to be careful of. I think I'll use this just kind of as a chance to tangent a bit, like one of the things that we're really excited by with this model is that taking this whole home approach really unlocks all these opportunities for the climate friendly investments, whether it's heat pumps, solar, all of that. And we don't want to see homes in these communities with older housing stock, health issues, inefficiencies left behind, where they're going to be deferred or not be able to use these new technologies because their system isn't up to date, et cetera. So we're hoping that this model is one folks can look at as helping create those opportunities to include low-income households and other program participants in this transition and the funds that are coming with it.
Yeah. And it looks like we have one last question, and then we'll leave a few minutes to close out here. How does this program it would be great to see, not sure how to quantify, how this program stabilizes families, households, and creates intergenerational wealth. Stable families lead to more resilient communities in many tangential ways, which, yes, we absolutely agree with. And it's something that we'll be speaking about in some of our other sessions is some of those evaluation metrics and how electrification and whole house models can help support the improvements to market value of homes, and support financial stability for families, and help with wealth building. So we'll have a little bit more information on that in some of our future sessions. But yeah, do you want to flag that as something that we think is very valuable in evaluating as we're looking at these programs? Great. Well, thank you so much to our audience for great participation, continuing in this series. We really appreciate hearing everyone's questions and figuring out what we can do to help support what you're planning and looking at implementing in programs that you're leading around the country. I think we'll just ask if there's any other closing thoughts from our panelists here, anything else you want to highlight related to this program or our work in the whole house model.
I would just note for folks on the call, New Jersey's doing a lot in this space, and we would be interested in working with other jurisdictions to figure out how to do similar work or further advance this cause. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and you'll have our contact information with the deck.
Thanks, Bert. Anything else, Justin?
Yeah, just appreciate folks' interest. We're excited by the work that's going on here and the partnerships that have helped us build some protocols and approaches that we feel are really robust and hopefully can be well integrated with programs that have a similar setup. So looking forward to continuing to share.
Absolutely. Yeah, and as previously mentioned, we'll be sharing the recording and a PDF of the slides from today. And just to close out, I'm going to launch our post-session evaluation survey. We'd love to get more feedback from you about the value of this training and if there's anything else that we can offer to you that will help be in support of your work. So I'm going to launch that and end our session recording. And as you exit, we'll just ask you to take a couple minutes and respond to that. But thanks again for taking the time to join us today. And Bert and Justin and Bianca, and I think we saw Kari from our New Jersey crew. Thanks for joining us and helping us spread the word about the good work happening in the state of New Jersey. We're very excited about it.
Thank you all.
All right. I am going to